In this video, I'm going to focus on identifying the stitches that you are working in your brioche so you can tell where you've stopped working. This may be a very simple concept for a lot of people, but I know when teaching new students how to use or how to work brioche, they get stuck on what their last step worked was. So I'm going to cover brioche 2-color knit flat. That's what this sample is. I'm also going to focus on brioche 1-color in the round and brioche 2-color in the round. I am not going to bother with brioche 1-color worked flat because it's knit the same on both sides, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start with brioche 1-color flat, and then we'll go back and talk about working brioche in the round. So I'm going to make some assumptions about the work that you're doing with your brioche flat 2-color. I'm going to assume that you know which is your main color, in my case this beautiful saffron, and which is your counter color, in this case this gray that I'm using. The one thing that I look at first and foremost when I am trying to decide where my work is stopped is whether my working yarns are together at the end of a row. When you work brioche 2-color worked flat, you have the slide property where you work across the front needle using your main color and then slide all of your stitches back to the right tip again and work a second pass with your counter color. So in my case, I know that I have completed either a right side or a wrong side row because my yarns are together. If they were separate and I had a working yarn on each end of my needle, I would know that I had to slide my stitches back to the other end of the needle and work a second row. The other thing I know is that the saffron color is my main color, and that's what's facing me in the stockinette stitch. If you pull your stitches apart, you can see what I think of as like W's, and this is the slip one yarn over column when you work the right side. So I know that the right side is facing me and both of my yarns are together. So that means that I have completed the last row completed is the wrong side row with color B or the counter color. The other marker that I can look for is how many of the stitches worked across the needle are in which color. So in my case, you can clearly see that there are far more color B or counter color stitches live on the needle, which means that's the last color I worked with. So if both of your working yarns are together, the right side is facing, and the total number, or the larger number of stitches is in your color B or your counter color, you know that you have completed a wrong side row. So that's how I tell with 2-color brioche worked flat where I'm at. So just to further the point about your yarns being together and what colors you have worked recently, I've got a gray yarn on the right side and a saffron yarn on the left side. What that tells me is I still have to slide my stitches because my working yarns are not together. They're on opposite ends of the project that I'm working. So I would, although my project fills pretty much the entire length of this needle, I would slide all of these stitches back to the right hand tip, and using my gray yarn, I would work across the row again. But how do I know whether I need to be working in purls or knits? Well, I know I need to work a brioche purl row because my main color is facing me in the stockinette stitch, or what we think of as the V's of a knit stitch. So that means I need to work my brioche purl stitches in the slip one yarn over columns that are facing us. I hope that's clear. If you've got questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. To decipher where you're at in a piece of 1-color brioche worked in the round, we need to look at the stitches that we have just worked. Imagine if you had set your work down, perhaps you got called away to answer the phone and you came back to find this. Would you know if you'd worked a brioche purl round or a brioche knit round? The way that I like to look at it is basing it on where the double stitches or the wrapped stitches are lining up. So for example, if we zoom in a little closer here, we can see that these are our knit columns. So these are the stitches that are worked as brioche knits on the right side. This column next to it, which I think looks kind of like little W's, and you can see the purl bumps in there, is the column that we work the slip-one yarn overs when we're working the brioche knits, or it's where we work our brioche purl stitches. And that is the stitch with the wrap on it. So to me that means that I am working the slip-one yarn overs on a brioche knit row because my brioche knit stitches are worked as singles. So if I look along to where my working yarn is, I can see that I have just worked a brioche knit because I've got a single stitch above a column of knit V's. So I need to continue working in a slip-one yarn over brioche knit method. Now if the opposite were true, let's actually just turn our work inside out. If the opposite were true and the working yarn was attached to the right needle, and we look at our column of brioche knit stitches, see how this is a double stitch above it? That would mean that I needed to work that stitch as a brioche knit. So it would mean that I was on a brioche knit round. So hopefully that helps you identify what stitches you have just worked and what stitches you need to work next. And last but not least, I'm going to show you how to identify what round you need to be working in brioche 2-color in the round. In this example of 2-color brioche knit in the round, I have come to the end of my round and will say I had to walk away and need to figure out what step I need to work next. With having both of your working yarns at the beginning of round, it can be just hard to decide what round you need to work next. So what I do is look backwards at what the color of stitches are. So similar to 1-color knit flat, I know that the majority of the stitches that I'm looking at are the saffron color, which means that was the last round I worked. And when I put that in conjunction with the fact that I know that the saffron color is my color B because it forms the slip-one yarn over columns when the right side is facing, it means that the last color that the last round that I worked would have been round B. When we work 2-color brioche in the round, typically your main color is your BRK rounds or your brioche knit rounds, and your counter color, the saffron in my case, works your slip-one yarn over or your brioche purl rounds. So when I put together the fact that the majority of the number of my stitches are saffron, and I've got my saffron as my color B, so my brioche purl round, I know that my next round that I need to work is going to be my brioche knit round, worked with color A. So there you go. That's a video on identifying your brioche stitches if you have to put your work down. I hope you found it helpful, and happy brioching.